The stain appeared out of nowhere, an unforgiving splash of dark red that marred the otherwise pristine white tablecloth. I stared at it, entranced by the way it seemed to spread, as if mocking the very cleanliness of my home. I had spent hours that morning scrubbing every inch of the house, ensuring that everything was in its place. The house had never felt more like a sanctuary, perfectly arranged, meticulously neat. But now this stain, so sudden and aggressive, felt like an invasion. It was as if the universe was demanding that I face something I wasn't ready to confront. I tried to remove it myself, dabbing at the fabric with a damp cloth, but the more I pressed, the worse it became. It wasn't just the stain that disturbed me, it was the feeling it gave me, a sense of inevitability, as if the damage was already done, and no matter how hard I scrubbed, I would never be able to erase it. I watched the red smear slowly spread outwards, the edges becoming more pronounced, more solid. Each brush of my hand seemed to only deepen the mark. It reminded me of a wound that never healed, of something permanently etched into the fabric of my life, never to be forgotten. The stain seemed to pulse in the dim light of the room, becoming more than just a spill on a tablecloth. It was a symbol, I realized, a symbol of something lost, something I didn't even know I was missing. Perhaps it was the control I had once thought I had over my life, the way I could make everything perfect, make everything right. But the stain, it was a stark reminder that no matter how carefully I arranged things, I couldn't protect myself from the inevitable messes that life threw at me. I couldn't keep everything in place. I turned away from it, feeling an overwhelming sense of frustration. I knew I could never make this tablecloth spotless again, but I couldn't bring myself to throw it away either. It was the only one I had, a gift from my mother when I moved into this house. I thought about the years that had passed, about the good intentions I had held on to as I tried to build something perfect, something that felt like home. Yet here I was, standing in the midst of something I couldn't clean up, something that would forever remain a part of my life's fabric. I knew I needed help, but asking for it felt like admitting defeat. How had I let things get this far? How had I failed to maintain the illusion of control I so desperately clung to? The stain was there, mocking me, a reminder of my own vulnerability. It had started so small, so innocent, but now it was a blemish that would never come out. No matter how much I tried to scrub, it would always be there, waiting for me to face it. The doorbell rang, and I walked away from the stain, wiping my hands on the dish towel. I was trying to push the thought of it away, trying to focus on the fact that someone was coming to help me. It was only after the door swung open and I saw her standing there, tall, confident, and effortlessly graceful, that I realized the stain had become more than just a blemish on my tablecloth. It was the first sign of something else, something I wasn't yet ready to confront. She was here now, a stranger in my home, but there was something in her eyes that felt familiar, something that made me feel uneasy, like the calm before a storm. She stepped inside, and I couldn't help but notice the way she moved. She was so different from anyone I had known, and yet something about her seemed to demand my attention. It wasn't just her presence, it was the way she moved, the way her eyes lingered on the room, taking it all in with quiet observation. And as I led her to the kitchen, where I had been attempting to clean the stain, I realized that the moment had already passed, that the stain had already set into something deeper, something that would be harder to erase than a mere spill. The sound of her footsteps behind me felt heavier than I expected, and my thoughts raced as I wondered how much she could see, how much she could read into the mess that had been made of my life. As she approached the table, her hands instinctively reached for the cloth, and I felt the weight of her presence even more. She was here now, and I couldn't turn back. The stain, still so glaring, seemed to grow larger as she reached for it. The first time she came back to clean, it felt different, somehow. I wasn't sure what I expected, but it wasn't this. She moved through my house with the ease of someone who belonged. Every step was deliberate, her eyes scanning the room with a practiced calmness, as though she knew exactly where to go, what to do, how to make everything feel perfect. The dust vanished from the shelves like magic. The floors gleamed as if they had always been this polished. I watched as her hands worked, quick, fluid, confident, and I found myself fixated on them. There was a certain grace in the way she worked, the way she touched every surface with purpose, as if she was somehow connecting with the space in a way I never had. The air felt different. With every sweep of the mop, with every cloth she passed over the counters, something about the house seemed to shift. It was subtle at first, like the scent of lavender in the air or the soft hum of the vacuum in the background, but it grew. The light in the living room felt warmer, the shadows softer. The kitchen, once cold and sterile, now had a welcoming glow. I found myself drawn into the changes she was making, almost as if I were seeing my home for the first time through her eyes. It was beautiful, but unsettling. I never thought I'd feel this way about a house that I had lived in for so many years. But watching her move, hearing the sounds of her cleaning, it was as if the space was coming to life and I was being pushed to the periphery. I wondered if she saw the cracks that I had long ignored, the small flaws in the walls, the scuff marks on the hardwood floors. Did she notice the things I had hidden away, the parts of myself I had forgotten to care for? It was almost as if her presence was peeling back the layers I had built up over time. She wasn't just cleaning the house, she was cleaning me. Scrubbing away the dirt I had allowed to settle in corners, the neglect I had hidden behind closed doors. I tried not to let the feeling take over me, tried to keep a distance, but there was something about the way she worked that made it impossible. She was gentle with everything, each movement slow, measured, as if she wasn't just erasing dirt, but instead caressing every part of the room. I noticed her fingers as they touched the edges of my furniture, the way she moved with the room, as though she was part of it. The way she bent down to pick up the stray thread on the rug, the way she dusted the picture frames with such care. It felt personal. She wasn't just cleaning, she was taking ownership of the space. I could feel it in the way her presence lingered, even after she was finished. The kitchen, once something I had never really cared about, now felt like a sanctuary. The countertops, which had always been cluttered with forgotten cups and unopened mail, were now pristine. I could see myself in the reflection of the polished surface. I realized I hadn't actually seen myself there in a long time. I had just moved through the motions, never paying attention to the way the light hit the corner or how clean the sink could be. But she saw it all, and now everything felt different. Not just cleaner, but more alive, more welcoming. It was as though I had stepped into a new version of my own home, one I didn't recognize but somehow wanted to stay in. It felt like a breath of fresh air, like something was being cleared from the air, something heavy, something that had been weighing on me for years. She finished for the day, leaving my house sparkling, in my mind spinning. I wasn't sure what it was about her, about the way she moved through my life, but it was undeniable. There was a quiet strength in the way she cleaned, in the way she made the space feel so new, and yet somehow more like home than I had ever felt. I watched her gather her things and walk to the door, her movements swift and sure, and for the first time in a long time, I felt unsettled. She was leaving, but it was as if she had taken something with her, something that had changed in me, something I couldn't name. I closed the door behind her and stood in the quiet that followed. The house was still. But it was a different kind of stillness now, one that felt full, alive, almost as if it were waiting for something else to happen, something more. I didn't know what it was, but I could feel it in the air. The silence now was expectant, heavy with possibility. I couldn't help but wonder what would happen the next time she came back. Would it feel the same? Would I feel the same? Or had something already shifted? Something subtle, something that I didn't understand yet. All I knew was that the house was no longer just a house. It had become something more, and so had I. It happened slowly, so subtly that I didn't recognize the shift at first. I had always been careful, cautious about the space between us, but as time passed, those invisible boundaries began to blur. The way her presence filled the room became undeniable, like a force I couldn't ignore. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me. After all, she was just the maid, someone I had hired to help around the house. But every time she touched something, cleaned a surface, or moved past me, I felt a tension, an unspoken awareness that I couldn't shake. It started innocently enough. The accidental brush of her fingers against my arm as she reached for a rag. The way she would pause for just a moment, her eyes meeting mine before she continued with whatever task she had been doing. I told myself it was nothing. She was just being polite, professional even. But there was something in the air that was different now, something that made it impossible to pretend I wasn't aware of the way she moved around me, the way her body seemed to draw my attention without even trying. It wasn't just the way she looked, though I couldn't deny that her beauty had begun to consume my thoughts, but the way she made me feel. She made me feel seen in a way that no one had in a long time. It was as if she had a way of reaching into the parts of me that I had buried, things I didn't even know were there. It wasn't until that day, when I caught her in the kitchen, bending over to scrub the floor, that I realized the change. Her body, toned and graceful, stretched in a way that seemed intentional, as if she knew exactly how to catch my eye. I told myself it was just her doing her job, but when her shirt rose slightly, exposing the curve of her back, the sight sent a jolt through me. I turned away quickly, my heart racing for reasons I couldn't explain. The air between us felt charged, thick with something I couldn't name. The space between us, which had always been comfortable before, now felt heavy, laden with something dangerous, something raw. I could feel my body responding before I even understood what was happening. My skin flushed, my pulse quickened, and for a brief moment I wondered if she could hear it. Could she feel the tension in the room, or was it just me, desperately trying to hold on to the pieces of myself I had carefully constructed? I didn't know if I was ready to confront what was happening inside me, but I knew one thing for sure. It was real. The way my eyes followed her, the way my body seemed to react to her presence, it was all real. And for the first time, I felt like I was losing control of something I had always kept firmly in place. She didn't notice, or if she did, she didn't acknowledge it. She continued moving around the house, cleaning, folding, arranging. But now every glance, every touch felt like a confession. Every time her fingers grazed the fabric of a chair or wiped a countertop, I couldn't help but think of her touching me. Every time she reached over to grab something, I wondered what it would feel like to have her hand on my skin instead. It was a quiet hunger, something I couldn't satiate. And every time she left, I found myself longing for her return, for that moment when our worlds collided again. The next day, I was cleaning the living room when she came in. She didn't say anything, just walked past me with that same easy grace. But this time, as she brushed against me, I felt it. The unmistakable heat of her body, the electricity that shot through me. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I didn't even try. I let the sensation linger, letting it settle deep into my bones. Even as I told myself I should be resisting, that this was all wrong. But in that moment, nothing felt wrong. It felt like the most natural thing in the world. I wanted her. I needed her. I had never wanted anyone like this before. When she left that afternoon, I couldn't shake the feeling. The house seemed quieter without her. I walked through the rooms, touching the things she had touched, trying to connect with the trace of her that lingered in the air. The chair where she had sat, the rag she had used to wipe the table, it all felt intimate now, like she had left a piece of herself behind, and I was desperately holding on to it, afraid to let it go. The house felt empty without her presence, and I knew deep down that it was no longer about the cleaning. It had never really been about that. She had become something else to me, something I couldn't escape, something I didn't know how to name, but couldn't ignore. As the days passed, my thoughts grew more consumed by her. Every time I saw her, I felt a rush of emotions I couldn't quite control. I tried to avoid looking at her the way I had before, tried to focus on the tasks at hand, but it was impossible. Every glance, every fleeting touch only made the hunger inside me grow. And yet I couldn't find the courage to speak about it, to acknowledge the way I felt. It was easier to pretend, easier to tell myself it was just a passing thing, a fleeting attraction that would fade with time. But deep down, I knew better. It wasn't going anywhere. It was only getting stronger. The next time she came, I didn't try to hold back. I didn't pretend that nothing had changed. I stood there, watching her, letting the heat rise in my body as I took in the way her hips moved as she bent down to pick something up. I didn't try to look away. I didn't try to hide the way I felt. I simply let it be. And when she glanced up at me, I held her gaze, my breath catching in my chest. There was something unspoken in the air between us, something that felt like it had been building for far too long. The moment felt endless, suspended in time, and I realized that no matter how much I tried to fight it, this feeling was real, and it was here to stay. It started quietly, a shift I couldn't quite put my finger on at first. It was as if the house, once a place of comfort and solitude, now felt crowded by the presence of something else, something I didn't understand. She had always moved through my space with such ease, but now, each time she entered, I could feel my body tense, my breath catch in my throat. It was subtle at first, a lingering touch, a glance held just a second too long, but soon it became impossible to ignore. The way her eyes would flicker over me, the way her movements seemed slower, more deliberate, like she was searching for something in me, something I wasn't ready to acknowledge. I found myself watching her more closely now, noticing every little thing she did. The way her hair fell over her shoulder as she bent down to pick up a towel, the way her hips swayed when she moved from room to room. It wasn't just admiration, though I couldn't deny the beauty of her body, the grace in her every step. It was something else, something deeper. I couldn't stop wondering if she felt it too, the pull, the tension in the air that had started to thicken around us. I began to question myself, to wonder if I was imagining it, but the jealousy began to creep in regardless. It was a slow burn, a constant undercurrent that made me question everything between us. The more I watched her, the more I couldn't help but notice the way she interacted with others. A casual smile, a soft laugh, a moment of eye contact that seemed to hold a deeper meaning. I couldn't help but wonder if she shared the same kind of unspoken connection with anyone else, if there were others who felt the way I did. I didn't want to feel this way, didn't want to be consumed by jealousy over something I couldn't control. But every time she laughed with someone else, every time she looked at someone with that same softness she reserved for me, I felt a pang in my chest. It wasn't rational, I knew that. I knew I had no right to feel this way. But the emotions ran deep, impossible to ignore. I began to question everything, replaying every moment in my head, every glance, every touch. Did she know what she was doing? Was she aware of the effect she had on me? The jealousy, though uncomfortable, had become a constant companion, lingering in the corners of my mind. I told myself it was just a feeling, a passing moment of insecurity, but deep down, I knew it was more than that. It was an ache, a desire for something more that I couldn't quite name, but which was becoming clearer with each passing day. And the more I watched her, the more that ache intensified. One evening, as she cleaned the kitchen, I noticed her laughing with a neighbor who had come by. He was young, charming, easy to talk to, and I saw the way she responded to him. Her laughter was warmer than it had been with me in weeks, her body more open, more animated. I stood in the doorway, my heart pounding in my chest, jealousy coursing through me like a poison I couldn't stop. I tried to pretend I didn't notice, tried to keep my composure, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. Every laugh, every smile felt like a dagger to my chest, and the longer I stood there, the more I realized how much I had come to rely on her attention, her affection, her closeness. When the neighbor left, she turned to me, her smile still lingering on her lips, but I couldn't focus on it. All I could think about was the way she had looked at him, the way her body had relaxed around him in a way I had never seen before. I forced myself to smile, to act like everything was fine, but the weight of the jealousy felt suffocating. I didn't want to admit it, didn't want to acknowledge the pain it caused me to see her share that lightness with someone else. It felt like I was losing her, piece by piece, and I didn't know how to stop it. The next few days passed in a blur. I kept to myself, avoiding her as much as I could. Every time I saw her, my heart would race, my mind would spiral, and I would feel the jealousy rise again. I watched her more carefully now, analyzing her every move, trying to figure out where I stood in her world, but it only made things worse. The more I watched, the more I felt like an outsider in my own home, like I no longer knew where I belonged. The house, once a place of comfort and security, now felt like a battleground, and the enemy wasn't anyone but me. And then, one evening, she came to me, sitting on the couch beside me, the warmth of her body sending a shiver through me. She was closer than she had been in days, her scent enveloping me, her skin warm against mine. I tried to push the thoughts away, tried to ignore the jealousy that still twisted inside me. But as she leaned in, her hand resting gently on mine, I couldn't help but wonder if I had pushed her too far. Had I pushed her into someone else's arms? Was this just an apology for the distance that had grown between us? Or was it something more? I wanted to ask her, to demand answers, but the words got stuck in my throat. The jealousy, the fear, the desire, it all mingled together, and I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know how to make sense of it. She was still there, still by my side, but something had shifted, something had broken, and I wasn't sure if it was something we could ever fix. That night, I lay awake, the sound of her breathing beside me a constant reminder of everything that had changed. I could feel her warmth, the soft rhythm of her chest rising and falling, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being lost. The jealousy had crept in, and it had taken hold of everything. It had taken something pure and turned it into something messy, something uncertain. And now I didn't know how to navigate it, how to return to the space we had once shared. The shadows of doubt and insecurity loomed over us, and I couldn't see a way out. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The night, the touch, the feeling of her skin against mine, the way she had moved with me, as if everything had been leading up to that moment, a culmination of everything we had been dancing around. But it wasn't just the intimacy that lingered, it was the aftermath. The way my skin felt alive with the memory of her, how every inch of me seemed to ache with the weight of what had happened. She had left me with something I wasn't ready for, something that now lived under my skin, buried in the marrow of my bones. The next morning, I could still feel her in every corner of the house. Her scent, faint but present, seemed to follow me, lingering in the sheets, in the air. It was as if she had become a part of the space, weaving herself into the very fabric of my life, and I didn't know how to unravel it. Every time I passed by the couch where we had sat, the memory of her hand on my arm, the weight of her body next to mine, made my heart race again. I could feel her touch, but it was hollow now. The connection we had shared, so real in the moment, now felt tainted, as though the intimacy had come at too high a cost. I tried to ignore it, tried to continue as if nothing had changed. But the house felt different now, somehow smaller, more suffocating. The air was thick with the unsaid, the unspoken things that still hung between us. I avoided her eyes when she walked past me, pretending that everything was normal, pretending that I hadn't just opened a door I couldn't close. But every time she came near, I felt it again, the shift, the weight of what had happened, the mess we had created without meaning to. I found myself cleaning the house more than usual, wiping down counters, straightening things that didn't need straightening. It was like I was trying to scrub away the marks of what had happened between us, trying to erase the memory of her touch from every surface. But the harder I tried to clean, the more the dirt seemed to multiply. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional, psychological, and no matter how much I wiped, no matter how much I tried to forget, the stain remained. I could feel it in the corners of my mind, lurking like a shadow, impossible to shake off. It was something deeper, something more insidious, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I noticed the small things more now. The way she moved when she thought I wasn't looking, the way her gaze would linger on me for just a fraction of a second longer than it should. It wasn't the same. It couldn't be. The distance between us had grown, but it wasn't a distance I could define. It wasn't like the space that comes with an argument, the kind that can be patched up with words. No, this was something different, something that had woven itself between us in the quiet moments, in the things we hadn't said. The house had become a battleground, not of words or arguments, but of silence, of unspoken truths that neither of us dared to face. I felt it every time I crossed the threshold, every time I caught her in my peripheral vision. She was still here, still occupying my space, but the intimacy that had once seemed so natural now felt foreign. Every time we passed one another, I could almost feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. It was like we were both walking around a landmine, pretending it wasn't there, pretending we weren't waiting for the inevitable explosion. And then there were the nights when she wasn't there, when the house was empty and quiet, and all I had left were the echoes of her presence. I could feel her in every corner, in every crevice of the house, and it made me restless. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of everything we had shared hanging over me. It was impossible to sleep, impossible to escape the thoughts that swirled in my head. What did it mean? What had it meant? The more I tried to understand, the more confused I became. I began to question everything. The way I had felt about her, the way we had come together so easily, as if it had been inevitable, but now I wasn't so sure. What had started as something beautiful, something intimate, had turned into something darker, something that left a mark I couldn't remove. I could feel the mess inside me, the chaos, and it was spilling over into everything. It wasn't just the house that felt dirty now, it was me too. I couldn't stop the thoughts, the questions, the guilt that gnawed at me, telling me I had crossed a line I wasn't supposed to cross. I wanted to confront her, to ask her what this was, what we were doing, but I couldn't. I was afraid of what the answer might be. I was afraid of what it would mean for us, for the space we had built together, for the delicate balance we had once had. I couldn't bear the thought of losing it, of losing her. But I also couldn't bear the thought of continuing down this path, pretending that nothing had changed. I was trapped in a cycle of longing and regret, and there didn't seem to be a way out. The mess, the dirt, was no longer just on the surface. It had seeped into everything, into my thoughts, my actions, my feelings, and I couldn't scrub it away, no matter how hard I tried. The house, once a sanctuary, had become a cage, a place where the truth couldn't be hidden any longer. And the longer I stayed here, the harder it became to breathe. I didn't know how to make it stop, how to fix what had been broken. All I knew was that the dirt would never truly disappear. It was always going to be there, buried beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered again. I couldn't deny it any longer. The truth had settled in me like an unwanted guest, lingering in the corners of my mind, making it harder to breathe, harder to think. The house, once a place of sanctuary, now felt like a cage, and I was trapped in it, suffocating on the weight of what had happened. What had started as a simple connection had turned into something impossible to ignore. The line we had crossed, the one that had seemed so blurred in the heat of the moment, was now glaringly clear. And no matter how much I tried to run from it, to pretend it hadn't happened, the reality was there, pressing in on me, suffocating every ounce of logic I had left. She was gone, but I could still feel her. Her presence was everywhere, in every corner of the house, in every empty space she had once occupied. The silence she left behind was deafening, louder than any argument could ever be. I walked through the rooms, unable to shake the feeling of her lingering touch, the memory of her gaze, of her body pressed against mine in a way that felt both inevitable and foreign. The house felt colder now, emptier, and yet there was something in the air that still clung to her. It wasn't just her absence. It was the weight of everything that had happened, everything I had tried to suppress. I thought about reaching out to her, trying to fix it, to say the words I had kept buried inside, but I couldn't. The truth, raw and jagged, made my chest tighten every time I even considered it. What was there left to say? What could I say that would undo the mess we had created, the wreckage we had left behind? I had opened a door that couldn't be closed, and now I had to live with the consequences. I didn't want to believe it, didn't want to accept it, but there was no escaping the truth. Everything had changed, and I couldn't go back to who I was before. I sat on the couch, the same couch where we had sat together, bodies so close, sharing something that had felt like a secret, like something forbidden. It was all so clear to me now, too clear. The jealousy, the longing, the guilt, it had all led to this moment, to this unbearable truth that I couldn't escape. I had crossed a line, but more than that, I had lost something I hadn't even realized I needed. The house had been a reflection of me, of my life, my choices, my walls. But now it was all different. Nothing felt the same. I wasn't the same, and I didn't know if I could ever go back to what it had been before. The weight of the silence was crushing. I could still feel her in the spaces she had filled. It wasn't just her presence. It was everything that had passed between us. The touch, the stolen glances, the moments of shared understanding. It had all built up to this inevitable, terrible moment where everything I had thought I knew about myself came crashing down. I wasn't just dealing with the fallout of a decision I had made. I was dealing with the aftermath of a life I couldn't recognize anymore. The mess I had created wasn't just physical. It was emotional, psychological, and now it was part of me. I couldn't undo it, couldn't take back what had happened. And yet, part of me still longed for it, still wished for things to go back to the way they were. But I knew that wasn't possible. We had crossed a line, and once that happened, there was no going back. It was like a door had opened that couldn't be closed again. The space between us had shifted, and the distance between us wasn't just physical. It was something deeper, something that had changed everything. I was no longer the person I had been before. The house was still, but inside me, everything was in turmoil. The silence had become unbearable, filled with all the things I couldn't say, all the things I couldn't undo. I couldn't stop thinking about her, about what we had done, about how everything had changed in a single moment. It wasn't just the act itself, it was everything that had led up to it. The jealousy, the desire, the fear, it had all built up to this. And now, here I was, sitting in the aftermath, trying to make sense of it, trying to find a way forward. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know how to fix this, how to fix myself. But I knew one thing. I couldn't live in this silence anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that nothing had changed, that everything was fine. It wasn't. And I had to find a way to accept it, to live with it, even if it meant facing the truth of what I had done, of what we had done together. The hardest part wasn't the act itself. It was the realization that it had changed everything, and I didn't know how to make peace with that.